Well, after 2 days of deliberation, a jury has found Philip Grandine guilty of manslaughter in the death of his pregnant wife.
On January 7, 2020, in Toronto, Ontario Superior Court Justice Faye McWad sentenced Philip Grandine to 15 years in prison for the manslaughter of his pregnant wife, Carissa Grandine. The former pastor, who had once led a congregation, preached about faith, covenant, and the sanctity of marriage, showed almost no reaction as the sentence was read aloud. It was the second time a jury had convicted him of the same crime. Outside the courtroom, Cliff McDowell, the pastor who had once tried to help his marriage survive, spoke to reporters.
It's a sad day for the family today. So there's no closure today. There's no rest for the family today. And this monster gets to play the system again.
This story began on the night of October 17, 2011, in a bungalow in Scarborough, Ontario, when a 29-year-old pregnant woman drowned in her own bathtub while her husband told police he had been out for a run. And as investigators dug deeper, they began to suspect this was no accident. Anna Carissa Darvin was born on November 10, 1981, in Pasay City in the Philippines, the eldest daughter of Ramon and Maria Charito Darvin. She went by Carissa. She was 13 years old when her family relocated to Toronto in 1994. Carissa was the kind of person who absorbed difficulty quietly so that other people didn't have to carry it. She had battled a long-term liver illness for years and rarely mentioned it. She worked extra jobs alongside her studies, alongside everything else, because she was determined to earn a double degree from the University of Toronto. She graduated in 2006 with an honors Bachelor of Science in Human Biology and Archaeology. Two disciplines, one woman who wanted to understand how living things worked and how the past shaped the present. After graduating, she built a career in downtown Toronto as a casualty underwriter for Berkeley, Canada. Precision work, analytical work, the kind of role that required the same careful, methodical intelligence she applied to everything she touched. Her faith was the other axis of her life. She was a member of Jarvis Street Baptist Church, and that community was not peripheral to who she was. It was central. She served, she showed up, she gave what she had. People who loved her called her a true example of a saint, not as a figure of speech, as a description. She had, over the course of her marriage, discovered that her husband was having an affair with a woman from their congregation, a woman who was also her friend, and Carissa had forgiven her, forgiven the woman, because that was the kind of person she was. Carissa had a forgiving heart. On October 11, 2008, Carissa married Philip Grandine at Jarvis Street Baptist Church. Philip was 22 years old. He was, at that point, the pastor of Annerdale Baptist Church near Eglinton Avenue and Dufferin Streets. Young, trusted, publicly faithful. By 2011, the couple were expecting their first child. Carissa was 20 weeks pregnant. She had nicknamed the baby Jellybean. She was careful throughout the pregnancy. She had been prescribed an anti-nausea medication but disliked taking it. It made her too drowsy, and she didn't want to feel that way while she was carrying her baby. She would not take anything she hadn't been prescribed. The health of Jellybean came first. It always did. In the first days of October 2011, Carissa attended a marriage counseling session and confronted Philip directly about the affair she suspected he had quietly resumed. He denied it. She pressed him. He denied it again. 3 days later, on October 14th, she became suddenly and inexplicably ill. Dizziness, disorientation, impaired muscle control, sedation, symptoms she could not explain. Philip drove her to St. Michael's Hospital. She was examined and tested. Her symptoms faded. She was released. 3 days after that, on the night of October 17th, Philip Grandine called 911 to report that he had returned home from a jog and found his wife unresponsive in the bathtub.
Toronto Ambulance, where do you need us?
12 Marsh Road.
Okay, so tell me exactly what's happened.
I just came home and I was out running and my wife was taking a bath, and when I came home she's in the bath but she's under the water and she's not breathing.
Okay, sir, did you remove the water from the bathtub?
No, I haven't.
Okay, take the moment to do that now, okay?
Okay.
Okay, how old is she, sir?
She's 29.
She's 29? Okay, is she breathing at all?
No, I don't think so.
Are you able to get her out of the bathtub?
I probably can. Do you want me to do that now?
Yes, I want you to do that now. Get her out, put her on the floor, flat on her back, okay?
I know how to do CPR.
Okay, well, I'm going to guide you through that. Do that right now. Get her out, put her flat on her back. What's your name?
Philip.
Philip?
Yeah.
Okay, Philip, we have plenty of help coming. We have police, fire, and ambulance driving there as fast as we can, okay?
Carissa ended up in the hospital, but by the time she got there, it was too late. She was already gone. She drowned. She was 29, 20 weeks pregnant. In those last moments, she was lost in that same confused haze she'd struggled with just days before at the hospital. She stepped into the bath, and somehow she never made it out. Philip Grandine's account to police was straightforward. He had gone for a run. He came home. He found Carissa underwater in the bathtub. He tried to lift her out and failed. He called for help.
So then you leave at 9:45.
I left. She was in the washroom. I came home an hour later, went down the hallway to the washroom to use the washroom and just to pee, and then I knocked on the door and I know she's still in there because the door is closed, the light is on, you can see the light under the door, and I said I have to use the washroom. I would normally never go in there to do that if I know she's in there. I will let her have a chance maybe to pull the shower curtain closed or something like that, but she didn't answer me, so I just opened the door, and that's when I saw that she was in the tub, and then I went to the phone and I called 911.
The account was simple. The evidence was not. An autopsy confirmed Carissa had drowned. It also found something else, a bump on her head, consistent with the time of her death, though not in itself fatal. Investigators noted it. They moved on. And then the toxicology results arrived. Carissa Grandine had lorazepam in her blood. Lorazepam, the drug sold under the brand name Ativan, is a controlled sedative used to treat anxiety. It causes drowsiness, disorientation, reduced muscle control, and impaired memory. It is not a drug anyone takes casually. It is not a drug prescribed to pregnant women. And it is absolutely not a drug that had ever been prescribed to Anna Carissa Grandine, not once, not by any doctor, for any reason. She was 20 weeks pregnant. She wouldn't take a mild anti-nausea medication because it made her sleepy, and she had a powerful sedative in her blood. How does a woman who won't even take her prescribed medication end up with a controlled sedative in her system? How does that happen? Investigators turned their attention to Philip. They found out he had recently been forced to leave his position as pastor at Ennerdale Road Baptist Church. The reason was an affair with a woman from his congregation, a woman who was also Carissa's friend. The whole congregation had been told about it. The marriage had fallen apart very publicly within the exact community that had watched them get married. Another pastor, Stephen Hadfield, had stepped in to offer marriage counseling only on the condition that Philip ended the affair, then stopped looking at pornography, which had become a serious, ongoing issue. Philip agreed to both. Anna installed a program on their shared home computer to block those kinds of websites. On paper, they were trying to repair things. Philip had resumed the affair almost immediately. After leaving the church, he had taken a position as a nurse manager at a seniors' care facility in Toronto. His duties were specific. He distributed medication to residents. He disposed of the surplus. Among the medications that passed through his hands daily, lorazepam. Investigators examined the couple's shared computer. What they found was a history of searches for what lorazepam was, for what it did, for what dose would be considered fatal. Those searches, the Crown would argue, had been made by Philip. They appeared in proximity to other searches for escort services, for sexual content that Carissa had no known reason to conduct. They examined the timeline of October 17th more carefully. Philip had said he was jogging. Phone records and digital evidence told a different story. The judge who later examined all the material found that Philip had in fact been at home during that period. He had been on the phone with his mistress, and he had obtained a temporary password used in the minutes before he called 911 to uninstall the pornography blocking program from the computer. The program was removed while Carissa was in the bathtub. Then, investigators did something that reframed everything. They went back and tested the blood samples taken from Carissa at the hospital on October 14th, the visit 3 days before her death, when she had presented with sudden dizziness and disorientation and symptoms she couldn't explain. Those samples also contained lorazepam. This is the part that is genuinely hard to get your head around. Justice McQuat later found that October 14th was not a one-off. It was a test run. The judge ruled that Philip had given lorazepam to both himself and Carissa on that day on purpose, to see how the drug worked, to understand the dose, to watch how she reacted. He wanted to know what would happen before he tried it again. The symptoms on that day were stronger than he had apparently expected, strong enough that he had to drive her to hospital. And it still didn't stop him. He just adjusted. 3 days later, he tried again. That is not someone who lost control in a moment of crisis. That is someone who ran a deliberate test on his pregnant wife and then used what he learned. Philip Grandine was charged with first-degree murder in May 2012. The first trial was held in 2014. The charge was first-degree murder. After hearing the evidence, the jury did not convict Philip of murder. They convicted him of manslaughter. Justice Robert Clark sentenced him to 15 years in prison. Philip's legal team launched an appeal. In September 2017, Ontario's Court of Appeal granted it. The original trial judge had made a legal error. During deliberations, the jury had sent a question to the bench, and in answering it, Justice Clark had introduced a theory of liability that had not been argued during the trial itself. The appeal court found this had compromised the fairness of the verdict. A new trial was ordered, but only on the manslaughter charge. Because the Crown had not cross-appealed the acquittal on the martyr count, prosecutors in the second trial were prohibited from arguing Philip had intended to kill his wife. That restriction matters more than it might seem. In the second trial, the Crown couldn't use the word intention. They couldn't put it to the jury that Philip Grandine meant to kill his wife. All they could argue was that he drugged her, which was a criminal act, and that the drugging led to her death even if killing her wasn't the stated goal. That is a much narrower argument than murder. And yet the judge's own words at sentencing were hostile animus, diabolical and violent, planned and premeditated, closer to almost murder. Those are not the words a judge uses in a routine manslaughter case. They are the words a judge uses when the legal box available to her is too small for what the evidence actually showed. The 15-year sentence, the most the Crown asked for, the same as the first trial, reflects the gap between what the law could call it and what Justice McQuat clearly believed it was. The second trial began in early 2019 before Justice Faye McQuat. Crown Attorney Donna Keldway built the case from the ground up. The access to lorazepam through Philip's workplace, the computer searches for dosage and effects, the pornography blocking program uninstalled while Carissa was in the bathtub, the phone call to his mistress on the night she drowned, the alibi that the digital record contradicted, the lorazepam found in Carissa's blood not once but twice, 3 days apart. Keldway addressed the jury plainly. Carissa Grandine died because she had been unknowingly sedated. She was drugged without her knowledge or permission. She was drugged against her will, and in that sedated state, she drowned in the bathtub. Even though Philip Grandine didn't intend her death, he was nonetheless responsible for her death. The defense said Carissa took the drug on her own, driven by depression after finding out about her husband's affair. They argued she either drowned by accident or took her own life. Emmett Thakor, Philip's lawyer, pointed out that no one ever saw Philip with the medication. No drugs were reported missing from the nursing home. In short, they pinned it on Carissa. Philip Grandine never testified, not at the first trial, not at the second. Through all the years, he never took the stand to explain himself or answer questions under oath. 2 trials, all that time he stayed silent. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? The jury came back after just a day or so, February 28, 2019. They found him guilty of manslaughter. Philip barely reacted, just stared straight ahead as the verdict was read. Later that year, in November, Justice McQuat delivered her findings. She didn't buy the defense's story at all. No sign Carissa was depressed, no evidence she had lorazepam, nothing to suggest she'd risk her 20-week pregnancy by taking something so dangerous, especially not with a baby she called Jelly Bean. The judge said Philip was the one who looked up the drug, stole it, and gave it to his wife. Not just once, but twice, a test run on October 14th and again the night she died. She called out Philip's resentment toward Carissa. She saw he was tangled in his affair and obsessed with pornography. Whenever Carissa was knocked out, he could go after those things, undisturbed. And that night Carissa drowned, Philip wasn't out jogging. He was home, on the phone with his mistress, removing the internet filter Carissa added in a last effort to save their marriage. On January 7, 2020, the judge handed down 15 years. She said his actions were closer to murder than any manslaughter she had ever seen. He appealed, again. But in May 2022, the Ontario Court of Appeal shut everything down. They didn't agree with a single point. Guilty verdict stands. Sentence stands. 15 years. And that was that. Philip Grandine was out of options. But all those hearings, all those appeals, what did they cost Carissa's family? Her mother, Maria Charito, her father, Ramon, her sister, Hannah. No court record tells you that. There's just Maria Charito's voice at the sentencing hearing. She forgave Philip because she's Christian, but she couldn't accept what happened. She said her daughter was crying out for justice from her grave. She said that 8 years after Carissa died. 8 years of legal back and forth, 8 years with Philip out on bail, more than 6 of them, living his life, while the Darvin family sat through every court date, waiting. The justice system finally worked. The sentence stayed put. But the price those people paid, coming back, hearing verdict after verdict, sitting across from him, no document will ever capture that grief. There's one detail buried in the court record that people tend to miss. It's not about drug tests or computers or legal arguments. It's this. When Carissa got sick on October 14th, suddenly dizzy and confused, she turned to her husband and asked him a question. She asked Philip if he'd given her a pill. He told her no. She was already disoriented. The drug was working on her mind and body. She didn't know what was happening, but even then something inside her reached for an answer. She asked the man who'd done it, point blank, if he was responsible. He looked at her and lied. 3 days later, she was dead. She was just 29. No sentence, 15 years, 50 years, any number at all, can measure the weight of that loss. Thank you for spending time with this case. If it moved you in some way, please consider leaving a comment. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.